Hi, so I just wanted to give you a precursor to this video. I'm recording it after the fact. I was talking at kind of a low volume the whole time, and it seems kind of lower, down, more down than I wanted it to be. So I just want to prepare you, and it's kind of long. Talking is like my therapy, so I'm really talking to myself and hoping people listen to it, but if you don't, that's okay. So you can skip through or whatever you want to do. But it's really about this idea and things I've been reading and songs I was listening to today, and this concept of consolation versus desolation. Consolation meaning comfort and finding comfort in this time versus desolation and devastation and what we're sitting in, focusing on. And so again, I hope there's some encouragement mixed in here and not just down. So I decided today to do a pre-recorded video because I don't know how long I'm going to take. And you can decide if you want to listen to it or not, or fast forward or skip. So today is Tuesday, the 31st, March 31st. And it's been 2 weeks. It's weird. I can't believe it's only been 2 weeks. But it's been 2 weeks since we had to sort of self-quarantine. And Missouri has been a week now, just over a week, on the mandatory shelter in place. And so today I kind of grounded myself. I closed myself up in my room for a while today. And I've just been reading and listening to music and stuff. And so I just wanted to share some things that I'm reading and thoughts that I had today. So first, stuff that I'm reading, I'll just share with you. So we have our church's Bible app, reading plan. And so I'll put a link to that in here. And then, so that's just a New Testament and Psalms and Proverbs reading plan for the year. And then I also I got this from Proverbs 31 Ministries. It's just a read through of the Psalms specifically. And so I just bought it and then printed it off. So it looks like this. When words fail, but that's backwards. So I've been doing that. Occasionally I'll throw it in there. And then with a couple of friends, we've been re-studying this. We did this as a church, but we're redoing it as a little group of, it's called Devotional Classics. And I'll put a link to that down there too. It's really good. It's excerpts of different, theologians, pioneers in the church, just different writings of theirs. And so we're on Ignatius of Loyola. And so I'm going to read a good section of that at the end of this. It's really good, talking about consolation and desolation. So I thought it was very fitting for this time. And so some things that I pulled out of that while I was reading too. So I will dive in. So some thoughts that I was having in these readings, the first ones, of course, are negative because there's a lot of negative feelings and things going on right now. And so the first one was devastation, and it kind of comes in waves. And the second one was isolation. And obviously we're isolated. We're kind of cut off, but I'm really thankful for technology to kind of keep us connected, even though it's different, it's not in person. But in the midst of the isolation, I kind of wanted to just reaffirm that we're not alone. We might be isolated, but we're not alone. And then the other word I'm going to kind of park on was from that reading, and it's desolation. And I looked it up. It's very depressing. And so desolation means destroyed, depopulated or depopulation, deprivation of companionship. And the one that kind of struck me the most was ruin. And something I've really been thinking about, even kind of at the beginning of this, was how we're given so much more time. Like, we have time. We always had the time, but we used it differently. We filled it differently. And a thought I had, or question I had today was, what is going to define this time? And I've told the kids, this is history in the making. This is going to be in history books, this time period, what's going on, but what's going to define the time. And not just, for it's our world, and it's our nation, it's our states. We've all kind of done the shelter in place at different times, and it's kind of rolling out and hitting us at different times. But also, locally, how it's affecting us locally, but also in our homes. How is this gonna define or change our homes and our families, but also ourselves? So I kind of did this bigger, I like visual and metaphor, and so I kind of just thought big, worldwide, but also how is this going to define us individually? And I don't remember who I said it to, maybe my friends, when we were doing our study one week. I said, this time is a gift, and if we come out the same, if I come out the same, I feel like I did it wrong. We did it wrong, right? If everything kind of goes back to the way it was. And I don't think it will. We're kind of changed. The country's changed. It's going to look different. But are we going to look different? Are we going to be the same? And I don't want it to be ruin. I don't want to be defined by that coming out of this. And I might get emotional coming in and out. So that's enough of that negative, because I'll kind of throw that stuff in there as I read through things, but I want to kind of touch on more positive words and things. So my last YouTube video, besides my parody, was months ago. Was it months ago? Where I was talking about God using my circumstances and very distinct sections of time to work in me, even though it wasn't good to be in it, but he was working in it, and I was able to clearly see that on the other side. And then it kind of prepared me for the next thing. And so he was still working in it for my good in some way that I just hadn't seen yet. And so it was kind of a preparation. And so I'm going to throw songs in there that I thought about. I thought about the song called New Wine, by Hillsong, and it's about making me new, God doing something new in me, and that what I want to come out, for it to be pleasant and refreshing, and a testament of what he's produced. And so I'll reference Matthew 5:17 for that. And I'm going to kind of jump back and forth and read some different things while, just kind of throw some different scriptures in there. And I didn't have this one ready. I had it on something else. So I'm going to flip to that real quick. What did I say? Matthew 5:17. So this is what it's referring to. He says, neither do men pour new wine into old wineskins. If they do, the skins will burst. The wine will run out, and the wineskins will be ruined. No, they pour new wine into new wineskins, and both are preserved. And so my thought is, God is doing something new, and I like the word preserved and kept. So I like that. I like that word, preserve, kept. And some, kind of going back to the destruction part though, I was reading, and the song Beauty from Ashes came to mind. And ashes, I was reading about sacrifice on one hand, but then also how ashes represented destruction. Something had been destroyed. I think of that kind of visual. something in ruin and is left in ashes, or, biblical symbolism, it could refer to mourning and sorrow and shame. There's a reference to 2 Samuel 13:19. A woman had been raped and cast out, and she covered her head in ashes and left crying. And but then I thought of the song Beauty for Ashes. It was a Crystal Lewis song a long time ago. And then there's also a modern song called Beauty for Ashes. So I'll link both of those. So I thought it was a good contrast. And in the terms of the mourning and beauty coming out of it, it's hard to see now, right? Nothing really looks beautiful right now when you turn on the news or anything. It's a hope. And so I'm going to read a section of Isaiah 61. And Isaiah 61, 1 through 3. And Jesus, actually the first couple verses, Jesus quotes. And he quotes it in Luke 4. So you can think of Jesus saying these first couple verses. But I'll read Isaiah 61, 1 through 3. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. So up till there, Jesus quotes that. And then he says, today this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. So he's quoting it, talking about himself. And then I'll continue. And the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn and provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. They will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord, for the display of his splendor. So I love all the contrast. And so that's what made me think Beauty for Ashes. So I will link those so you can listen to those. I have a playlist too that I'll link that so you can listen to a bunch of different songs together to sort of go with the theme. So let me pick back up. I took a little breather, so I'm coming back in. All right, so the Ignatius of Loyola, I'm going to jump in with some of those excerpts. And so this was in the 1500s that he wrote this. And so he's talking about this contrast of consolation versus desolation, and this good spirit versus bad, so evil. And so he said the good spirit acts awakening the conscience to a sense of remorse through good judgment, through the good judgment of their reason. It is common for the evil spirit to cause anxiety and sadness and to create obstacles based on false reasoning, thus preventing the soul from making further progress. I want to make progress. It is characteristic of the good spirit to give courage and strength, consolation, tears, inspiration, and peace, making things easy and removing all obstacles so that the soul may make further progress in good works. So, in consolation, it's talking about kind of a direct connection to serving the Lord and praise, faith, hope, charity, interior joy, salvation, inspiring it with peace and quiet in the Lord. Desolation, in contrast, darkness of the soul, turmoil of the mind, inclination to low and earthly things, restlessness, resulting from many disturbances and temptations, which lead to loss of faith, loss of hope, loss of love. It is in desolation a soul finds itself completely apathetic, tepid, sad, separated as it were from its creator. One in desolation must strive to persevere in patience, which is contrary to the vexations that have come upon him. He should consider also that consolation will soon return, and strive diligently against the desolation. He talks about why we're in desolation. I don't really need to go into that because we can apply it to ourselves today. But he does say, this is somebody else's writing. This isn't the Bible, so you can take it for what you will, your own. He talks about one reason being giving us true knowledge and understanding so that we may truly perceive that is not in our power to acquire or retain, and it being a gift and grace of God. And that's probably hard to hear for people. So again, take what you will. I'm not going to continue on that. So going into grace, though. A person who is in consolation ought to think of how he will conduct himself during a future desolation, and thus build up a new strength for that time. Take care to humble and abase himself as much as possible. On the other hand, a person who is in desolation should recall that he can do much to withstand all of his enemies by using the sufficient grace that he has and taking strength in his Creator and Lord. The enemy is weak in the presence of strength, but strong if he has our will. He will lose courage and take flight when we make a show of determination. In like manner, if we lose courage and begin to retreat, the anger, rage, and vindictiveness of the enemy becomes great beyond all bounds. The enemy will lose courage and take flight as soon as a person who is following the spiritual life stands courageously against his temptations and does exactly the opposite of what the enemy suggests. The flip. It's talking about kind of being on guard. Just as the commander of an army pitches his camp, studies the strength and defenses of a fortress, and then attacks it on its weakest side, in like manner, the enemy of our souls studies from all sides our theological, cardinal, and moral virtues. Wherever he finds us weakest and most in need, regarding our eternal salvation, he attacks and tries to take us by storm. So now we're talking about light. Let's get light. It belongs to God and his angels to bring true happiness and spiritual joy to the soul, and to free it from the sadness and disturbance which the enemy causes. It is the nature of the enemy to fight against such joy and spiritual consolation by proposing seemingly serious reasons, subtleties, and continual deceptions. With the experience and knowledge acquired and noted, one may better guard himself in the future against the customary deceits of the enemy. I'm going to read the Bible excerpt from 1 Peter 5, 6 through 11. It says, and one of these verses we've probably heard a lot recently, but I'm going to read the whole section in context. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that he may exalt you in due time. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. Discipline yourselves. Keep alert. Like a roaring lion, your adversary, the devil, prowls around, looking for someone to devour. Resist him, steadfast in your faith, for you know that your brothers and sisters in all the world are undergoing the same kinds of suffering. And after you have suffered for a little while, the God of all grace, who has called you to his eternal glory in Christ, will himself restore, support, strengthen, and establish you. To him be the power forever and ever. Amen. And I'm going to reread part of that Isaiah again and leave it on a positive note. All right. Jesus said, "The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn and provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. They will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor. So, what is going to define your time? What's going to define this time for you? We can't really control what's happening or what's going to come out of it, but we can control what we're putting in and what we're doing, what we're producing, what we're cultivating, and allow God to work in it. He's working in it. He's working it out for our good. So just stay diligent and hopeful. Just to kind of wrap it up, seemed kind of down a lot. I didn't really want to do that, so I hope it was encouraging. And so I'm really just trying to not, again, sit in the devastation of it. I'm not ignoring it, but it's hard not to focus on the isolation part, but I don't want to be ruined at the end. And so kind of, again, what's, going to define this time? How am I going to come out? How are we? And I think a lot of that is in our control. We can't control a lot of what's going on out there, but I can control what's coming in here. So I don't know. I hope that helps somebody. I hope it can be encouraging. So again, not for myself, not focusing in as much on the turmoil. I can, we can still be aware and educate ourselves. But I want to focus on the beauty. I like seeing a lot of people's posts, posting beautiful things, and life affirming, life giving things. That's what I want to put out there. So the preservation and beauty, and hopefully producing something good on the other side of this, because God is working. I believe it. He's working in it. Our world's broken. It's devastating. But he's going to do something good in me, and hopefully through this, for our world, for families, for people. So that's all. So I'm going to link some songs that I talked about, and that I've been listening to today. So I hope you enjoy your day.